I've had a sore head all day. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, the JBL Charge 3. Why? You got a speaker, it's years old, and we just want to know about the Flip 6. Yes, I know. But do you know, a lot of people are interested because it's now 30 watts, 20 watts to the woofer, 10 watts to the tweeter. How does it compare to older JBL Charge speakers? JBL Charge 3, a speaker that a lot of you are still using, a speaker I really, really like. The only problem is for me, didn't have the deep bass that I now require, but I enjoyed the speaker for many years. It still has a place because it can still do a job for its size. Now, I'm saying that, the Flip 6 is a lot smaller. So is it now something that people who are into the JBL 3 now consider as an upgrade, the JBL Flip 6? Or, indeed, people are saying, do you know what? A JBL Flip 6 has got as much bass as a JBL Charge 4. And when people say things like that, I've got to get out my measurements. I've got to actually measure it because I want to know, is that true or is it false? So, on paper, if I measure the frequency response of all these speakers, what difference does it show?
So the JBL Flip 6 compared to the JBL Charge 4, the bass adjustment at low volume is more pronounced on the Flip 6 than the Charge 4. If you look at the 40% mark, the Charge 4 is upper bass pronounced, whereas there's a deeper bass adjustment on the Flip 6. We also get a pronounced 4.5 kilohertz dip on the Charge 4 and roll off as soon as we hit the harmonics, whereas the JBL Flip 6 is more extended into the harmonics. The Flip 6 does have a bit of a mid suck out compared to the Charge 4, and even at max volume you can see the highs are more pronounced on the Flip 6 compared to a smoother response on the Charge 4. By the time we're hitting 70-80% on the Flip 6 and the Charge 4, the bass you can see starting to even out in terms of the Charge 4 now having more relatively deep bass than it did at lower volumes. And then the JBL Charge 3, there is a lack of deep bass. It is upper bass heavy. There is no adjustment for bass at low volumes, and a bright signature. It's on the rise from 6 kilohertz, but it has strong mids compared to the Flip 6, which does appear to be a weak point at low volumes and doesn't really smooth out till 80%.
Of course, frequency response is a small part of the actual equation. One thing you'll never get out of the frequency response is how big and how wide is the sound coming from that speaker. It just tells you the balance of the speaker. Don't get carried away with the frequency response. Just use it as part of the overall decisions in deciding what a speaker offers. We do have smaller drivers. I'm saying smaller drivers because we've now got very fast oval racetrack shaped driver optimized apparently by Harman, but using their advanced algorithm. And that's what they say. And it's amazing, isn't it? But can a small speaker sound big? Well, I've already done a review on it. It doesn't sound big. It sounds like quite an impressive small speaker at lowish to moderate volumes. It's a decent speaker overall, but it does best at moderate to low volumes where it's more bass heavy, where there's a lot of extra bass adjustment, which reduces as you go up the volume scale. So we've had a look at the frequency response. They are tuned all very different. It's worth remembering. Woofer, tweeter, woofer, woofer, woofer. And that's the thing about the JBL Charge 3 is stereo, and not just stereo. If you don't upgrade the firmware and you've got a pair of JBL Charge 3s, you can put them into stereo without going into the nightmare app of JBL. Now, to be fair, it has improved in later iterations, but for a long time, it's been a nightmare. The worst thing that ever happened to JBL, in my opinion. I know they want you to hook up 100 speakers. And please tell me, what's the most JBL speakers you've ever hooked up? I mean, why put all this money into be able to hook up to 100 plus speakers when we want two in stereo? And we want to be able to do that without going into the app. Just press the button, like we do with Soundcore. You work for Soundcore, why are you promoting them? Oh, hang on a sec, I don't work for Soundcore. I'm just telling it like it is. So, JBL Charge 3, JBL Charge 4, Flip 6, around 50% volume. In the real world, Alan Ross is measuring it. They've all said it's just as much bass here as there is in a Charge 4. Let's find out if that's true. I wasn't expecting that. Do you know what? When volume matched around 50% volume, there's actually more mid bass and more upper bass and more overall bass on the Flip 6. And that's because of the amount of bass adjustment there is at lower volumes, which is not what they do for the tuning on the Charge 4. So you'd expect that to even out as you've got the volume. So at moderate to low volumes, yes, depending on how you determine it, you can make an argument saying there is more bass on the Flip 6 because of its tuning, and the fact that it can deliver it is impressive in itself on the Flip 6. What there isn't is the bass extension that you still get on the JBL Charge 4, and that's not a surprise. It's got bigger drivers. How big are they out? I'll tell you. Its surface area is actually the greatest on the Charge 3, 3,926 millimeters squared, 3,534 millimeter squares, 3,000 millimeter squares. So in terms of surface area, it is greater on the oldest of the bunch, the JBL Charge 3, followed by the bigger drivers of the Charge 4. So it does have a bigger woofer. It does sound bigger. There is recessed. The vocals do not pop, in my opinion, on the Flip 6. What it doesn't do is sound bigger than the Charge 4. You hear them side by side. Now, you're hearing them both over, whether it's headphones, on speakers, you're hearing them on the same drivers. When you hear the different drivers, you will hear that difference. This sounds bigger, and you do hear more bass depth. The sound signature, I would say, is darker than both the Charge 3 and the Charge 4. But if bass is not an issue to you, if you actually want a speaker that doesn't deliver that much bass, because you don't like, it's a matter of taste how much bass you want, the Charge 3 can still hold its own. Because, look, it's smaller than the Charge 4, smaller than the Charge 5. For its size, and if you don't want bass, it still has a place to play. It's a very clear sounding speaker, and it's stereo, old-fashioned stereo in the JBL world. But without that bass, it is a bit thin sounding. What happens when we push the volumes around 75% volume?
I want it like you want it too. Don't get insecure, baby. I like you, sure, baby. Cause that's the only way to build something amazing. And there's gonna be some bad wishes from people that don't really understand the feeling that we have. And there's gonna be some bad wishes from people that don't really understand this what we have. Like you do it, like you do it, like you, hips don't lift, so we keep growing just like we do it, like you do it, like you, some bad wishes from people that don't really understand the feeling that we have. There's gonna be some bad wishes from people that don't really understand is that we have. Oh baby, keep loving, keep loving me just like you do it, like you do it, like you, hips don't lift, so we keep growing just like we do it, like you do it, like you. Like you.
do get with the Flip 6 is a lot of fizz. Now, it's starting to get a bit harsh at these volumes, but you do get a lot of fizz when you compare it to the JBL Charge 4. By comparison, the Charge 4 now sounds a little bit dull without the sparkle of the Flip 6. But the Charge 4, again, does offer more bass extension, especially now as we got the volume scales where you don't get the bass adjustment on the Flip 6 that you do at a lot of lower volumes. The Charge 3, again, if bass is not an issue, the Charge 3 still has a place to play. It's not out of place in this comparison. All three have something to offer, and I wouldn't say there's a clear winner. I would actually say this is a bit of a threesome. It's a three-way tie. They all offer something different, and they all have their negatives. Dull, bit harsh, bass light. And those are all volumes a little bit recessed in the mids, robs it of forward vocals, and that will come across in comparisons. As I said, don't forget, in the real world, when you actually hear different drivers, the Flip 6 will sound smaller than the Charge 4, while it can hold its own in the bass. Just remember, if you hear the actual speakers themselves, the Charge 4 will simply sound bigger. What can it do at maximum volume?
I know we grew up a little too fast. I miss the days that we chill and relax. Where did the time go? It all passed. Now I need to go back. I had no worries, but always had plans. Only thing I did was pick at the trash. Now it's much harder to laugh. Hard to get up and then work on my craft. Yeah. I need inspiration. Don't need no validation. No more medication. Just try some meditating. I don't need you to save me. Feel like all of you hate me. Everything's been so hard with all the situations lately. I just need to numb the pain for a minute. I just wanna run away on vacation. I don't know what else to say now. I just need to numb the pain. Well, maybe I'm done, maybe I've lost. Still putting up a fight because I love my mom, I love my family. When I was young, they would all look after me. I don't know why, but I feel like a burden. I spent my life overthinking my purpose. Can't really cry, I'm so used to the hurt. Trauma keeps up at me at the wrong moment. Oh, I just wanna numb the pain for a minute. I just wanna run away on vacation. I don't know what else to say now. I just need to numb the pain. Need to numb the pain for a minute. I just wanna run away on vacation. I don't know what else to say now. I just need to numb the pain.
So the Charge 3 does go the loudest. Of course, it has the least deep bass, although it has more upper bass at maximum volume than the JBL Flip 6. It's quite evident the Charge 3's bass at maximum volume is quite weak compared to the rest of the frequency response. It's quite mids heavy, but there will be a tad more in the way of deep bass than the Flip 6. It's 1 dB up at 60 Hz, but otherwise the Flip 6 has more bass. But overall, JBL Charge 3, Flip 6 have the same amount of bass at maximum volume, and although quietest because it doesn't have the strong highs that the other two retain, the Charge 4 retains the most in deep bass. It's 4 dB up on the Flip 6 at 60 Hz, 3 dB up on the Charge 3. And in terms of overall bass, the Charge 4 and the Flip 6 about the same in terms of bass, but of course the Flip 6 has screaming highs, and that's the difference now between the Charge 4 and the Flip 6.
Feel a bit of a nut at the moment. And do you know what? What's the loudest speaker on this table? It's the newest. No, it's not the newest. It's the slightly. No, it's not the slightly older. It's the JBL Charge 3. And it's not even because it's completely reducing the bass compared to the other two. It actually balances out as you go up the volume scale because the reduction in bass isn't as dramatic as on the newer speakers. In fact, in terms of upper bass, that's where it wins out. It's got the most upper bass of these three speakers at maximum volume. It is lacking in mid bass against the other two speakers, but it has a little bit more bass extension than the Flip 6. Look, I'm not saying, wow, the bigger JBL Charge 3 has more bass extension than the tiny, tiny, tiny Flip 6. I'm not saying that's impressive. What I'm saying is, it's not out of place. It's still offering something. It does level out. Look, I'm not saying it's a great listen. The dull, rolled off highs of the Charge 4 may be your best bet at louder volumes. Simply because that's overblown, but you can go into the EQ, which you can't do on the other two because they don't have EQ in the app, and roll off the treble, push the bass a little bit more. Actually, overall, the Charge 3 and the Flip 6 surprisingly sound quite similar. So again, you Charge 3 lovers may think, wow, I can get a smaller speaker, not lose out much, actually maybe get a little bit more bass at lower volumes. But it is harsh. The least harsh, even the Charge 3 is harsh, a speaker I really love. And the Charge 4, simply by not having the harshness of the other two speakers, maybe your winner. But we're going 100% volume. You're probably saying, I just want it to go loud. And then you may love the Flip 6, but you may have to do that all day long to listen to it. The mids on the Charge 3 are the strongest on the table. And again, it's not that well balanced, but it may be a little bit easier to listen to than the JBL 6. If you've got a JBL Charge 3, you may have a question to ask about whether you might want to get the Charge 6 get the Flip 6. Just remember, you won't be able to connect them both. Why? Because it's JBL. So the JBL Charge 3, if you don't upgrade the firmware, it would be Connect. If you do upgrade the firmware, it becomes Connect Plus, which means you can connect it to the Charge 4, but you can't connect either of the Charge speakers to the Flip 6 because, of course, it is Party Boost. It's actually the most expensive at the moment. That you can get the Charge 4 for about 99 quid, $99, well, that's £119, $130. 27 watt hour battery is a bigger battery than the 17.3 watt hour on the Flip 6. All, of course, it's JBL. They only give you SBC codecs. That's what they do at JBL. 22.2 watt hour battery on the JBL Charge 3. 4.1 Bluetooth, 4.2 Bluetooth, Flip 6 5.1. No, because it's an older speaker, no USB-C connection on the Charge 3, whereas we do get them on the Charge 4 and the Flip 6. We do get auxiliaries on the Charge 4 and the Charge 3, no auxiliary on the Flip 6. No, can't use it as a power bank, but you can use the Charge 3 and you can use the Charge 4 as a power bank. You can use the Charge 3, that older speaker, as a speakerphone. You can make cool. In the old days, you used to get features, but now we don't get features. We get mono. So, can't use that as a power bank, can't use that to make phone calls. Can use that as a power bank, but you can't use it to make phone calls. In terms of power, 30 watts, 20 watts, 800 grams, 965 grams, half the weight of the Charge 4 for the Flip 6. My Flip 6, which is the GG version, does not float. It sinks. But both the Charge 4 and the Charge 3 can be dropped in water. They will float, and they will float with the drivers up. So in other words, you can actually play it. JBL, with all their might and their advanced technology, 116 milliseconds YouTube latency. Ooh, that's no good. But hang on, it's better than the 210 milliseconds I personally get on my devices in my testing for the Charge 4. Even better than the 225 milliseconds I personally get on the Charge 3. Only the Flip 6 will give you tweeters, and only the Flip 6 will give you EQ in the app. And that's a wrap up. So, the people who said, hey, the bass is about the same as the Charge 4, going to depend on what volume you're playing. There's no doubt. This has been tuned with a lot of mid bass. That's where the emphasis for the bass is. But bass is very heavy at lower volumes, and it will reduce relative to the rest of the frequency response as you got the volume, and it will limit completely at 80%. So you will still get more deep bass and more bass extension on the Charge 4, but overall bass, depending on how you measure it and how you're listening, yes, they are right. You can get as much or more bass, depending on the volume, out of the Flip 6 That's impressive, but hey ho, it's still a small sounding speaker. That's still a bigger sounding speaker. And the Charge 3, well, it doesn't have bass at all. Well, it has upper bass. And it has a mids emphasis. And it still has a part to play, as I said. It's not outdone on this table, because a lot of you who still say, well, I prefer the Motion Plus over the Motion Boom because I don't need all that bass. And you'll be the same people saying, do you know what? I can pick that up for pretty cheap on eBay. It's stereo. And I can get 2 of those and easy link stereo, just pressing the button. I don't need the app. And you'll be happy, as I was for a long, long time. But once you need bass, you pretty much had it with the JBL Charge 3. Conclusion is, I think I made the conclusion. No, I pretty much told you how the bass relates. That's a speaker I like, but it's very, very harsh as you go up the volume scale. So again, moderate to low volumes. Don't get carried away by how I've seen a lot of people saying, well, there's as much bass and blah, blah. It's a small speaker that sounds small, and it's most impressive at lower volumes. Of course, there's a speaker missing on this table. It's the JBL Charge 5. That's going to come in the next video. And I hope you watch that video and watch lots of ads so I can afford to get more speakers. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.
I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. Ain't no project wife, got my logic right, cause I'm not your type. I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. Sorry, ma, I ain't get it right. I'ma just live my life. I ain't about that. I ain't about that life.